One of the parties here is the owner of Pornhub, right?
Yes.
And what percentage of the material on that is not obscene as to children?
Well, Your Honors, if we're talking about the youngest minors, I would agree that most of it is, and that is how we read the law.
Is it like the old Playboy magazine? You have essays there by the modern day equivalent of Gore Vidal and William F. Buckley Jr.?
Not in that sense.
Well, important business happening in the Supreme Court this week. Justice Samuel Alito is asking the tough questions. When it comes to Pornhub, does it have essays for people to enjoy like the old Playboy magazine?
Hey.
So I don't know. You tell me, Waz. I mean, are you someone who's familiar with Pornhub's poignant and intellectually stimulating articles?
Listen, no, they don't have Hunter S. Thompson on staff in the way that Playboy used to. No, Pornhub is for one thing and one thing only. Now, there are different varieties of that one thing. I mean, whatever floats your boat, but people go there for one reason and one reason only.
It's America's online spank bank. That's really what it's for. So I understand why some are raising concerns about young people and how easy it is for them to access sites like Pornhub. And that's what this is really about. Okay, so basically, at issue is a Texas law that would require visitors to pornography sites to basically undergo an age verification process to prove that they're 18 or older. And I'm just gonna say right off the bat that these policies are awful because it requires you to share personal information on a site that you probably don't want the government monitoring you on, you know what I'm saying? And it feels like this is like Big Brother watching. Now, of course, the sites themselves would collect this information, even though they're claiming they wouldn't collect and keep the information. I'm personally not buying that, especially since this is the kind of data that sells. This is the kind of data that websites already collect and sell to third parties. But nonetheless, let's get to the details of what this age verification process includes. So the law applies to any commercial website, more than 1/3 of which is sexual material harmful to minors. It requires such sites to use one of several methods to verify that users are 18 or older, and it does not allow companies to retain the information their users submit. But the challengers said adults would be wary of supplying personal information for fear of identity theft, tracking, and extortion. And they would be correct in having those concerns, if you ask me. Now, Texas isn't alone in wanting to pursue this kind of legislation. In fact, 18 other states have now passed similar age verification laws. And in response to it, Pornhub has cut off access entirely in these states. And an adult industry trade group and companies that basically produce sexual materials have teamed up to challenge the law on constitutional grounds. So what's the argument? What are they saying? Well, the lawyer, Derek L. Schaefer, said the law violated the First Amendment by requiring age verification measures like the submission, accurate word in this situation, of government issued IDs that placed an unconstitutional burden on adults seeking to view sexually explicit materials. He said parents could protect their children by using content filtering software. So I'm gonna pause because I'm curious what you think about that argument, Waz.
It's tough, man. I understand the sort of Big Brother logic to it, but I will say, man, and Anna, they're gonna accuse me of tacking to the right here. I do think the readily availableness of pornographic material to young people on the internet is a problem. I do think it's too easy for a young person to pull up, a dude, giving a horse fellatio on the internet. Like that just shouldn't be readily available at the fingertips of a 9-year-old who's on an iPad. Like, I just don't think that should be the case. I do think there needs to be a way to hold this back. And part of it is showing my age. Like, we are of the age and aware, one, the internet, we came of age with the internet as we were still kids. Unlike people that are younger than us that just was born into this world, and unlike the people that are older than us who got the internet as already being adults, right? And I do remember the freedom sort of doing whatever the hell you want soon as you logged on to AOL. But the bottom line is like, you had to wait 5 minutes on your cheap old dial-up to get a peek of a nipple on a JPEG. Like, it was insane. Like, the hoops you had to jump through in order to get your hands on pornographic material was crazy. And I just think it should be harder. Maybe it's just because, well, that's how I grew up and I think that was a good thing. But I do think it needs to be harder for young people to view pornographic materials.
I don't think parents, look, who am I to tell people how they should parent and raise their children? But I don't think you should just give an iPad to a 9-year-old and be like, see you later. Like, at some point, I do think that the responsibility lies with the parents. And there are content filters and there are ways to protect your very young children from accessing this type of explicit material. They're eventually going to get to an age where, whether there's age verification or not, they're going to figure out how to get that content. And I think what's really at play here is the unwillingness to have the difficult, awkward conversations with kids about the birds and the bees, about sexual activity, how to keep them safe. Like, I think that those conversations need to happen. And it does not surprise me that a very conservative state like Texas would want to skirt that very important responsibility that parents and adults have, and instead just engage in this like nanny state behavior of forcing everyone, including adults, to input all this personal information into a porn website. Like, I think that's crazy. I don't like these laws. I understand the importance of keeping children safe. I think there are other ways that you can do that without like this heavy-handed personal data situation that makes me uncomfortable, and I don't even access these sites. Like,
yeah, it seems pretty draconian, but like I said, I will say, the old days were way more draconian. When you would walk into a mom and pop video store, and they had the adult stuff sectioned off, and it was like, that curtain that's just like a bunch of long beads, and it makes the noise as soon as you try to walk in there. Like, if you would have ever, as a 12-year-old, in your mom and pop video store started walking in, somebody would have chased you out of there. Or if you went to the newsstand, like there was a newsstand by the F train where I lived in Queens, and like they had the regular sports and even like men's magazine like FHM or whatever. Then they had that stuff, and the second you got a little too close to that section, the Indian dude behind the counter be like, "What are you doing back there? Get back over here! What do you think is going on right now?" So guys, like if you think this was draconian, man, trying to do this in person as a young person, under adult supervision, it was impossible.
Okay, but forget the kids for a second. Let's go back to those old days where men would have, like, let's keep it real, it was mostly men. Like they'd have to go to these stores in person to like, man, you guys have no shame, no shame.
None whatsoever.
Like, let's say I were a little bit different from other women and I was like super into that kind of content. There's no way in hell I would walk into a store like that. No way in hell. I'd be too ashamed, too embarrassed. But no, dudes don't care. They'll go to the store. They'll show their face.
And I just, I do remember like old people, like older gentlemen walking into that back room of the mom and pop rental video store and thinking to myself, God, I can't wait to be 18 one day.
Oh my God. All right, so let's get back to the story real quick, because now the Supreme Court is basically hearing arguments about this, right? So they're listening to the free speech arguments being made in regard to American adults and how they shouldn't be like hampered in wanting to access this content, and they shouldn't be forced to input personal information. And they're weighing that against the need to protect kids. And based on yesterday's oral arguments, Pun intended, Kate, who produced this story. The justices appeared to be more sympathetic to the state's case, which doesn't surprise me. It's a Supreme Court that leans heavily conservative. So Justices Samuel Alito and Amy Coney Barrett basically scoffed at the argument that parents could do content filtering software on their kids' devices. Let's take a look at that.
Mr. Schaffer, do you know a lot of parents who are more tech savvy than their 15-year-old children?
Justice Alito, it's a fair question, and I don't know that I think kids may be ahead of parents, but that's a problem with this law. It's not solving for the fact that...
Well, it's a problem with filtering, isn't it?
I don't think it is, Justice Alito, because this is filtering software that is designed to withstand circumvention, including by sophisticated tech people in the workplace and in courthouses.
I mean, Mr. Schaffer, come on, be real. There's a huge volume of evidence that filtering doesn't work.
I mean, kids can get online porn through gaming systems, tablets, phones, computers. Let me just say that content filtering for all those different devices, I can say from personal experience, is difficult to keep up with. So, and I think that the explosion of addiction to online porn has shown that content filtering isn't working.
Maybe that's true, but the other argument that I would make is you're unable to protect your kids from everything. I mean, I don't know if you've come across this situation, but the last time I was on a flight, they had the seat back screen and I was watching a movie. I didn't expect nudity in the movie. There was nudity in the movie, like full blown nudity. There's kids everywhere on the plane and they can totally see my screen. And I'm just like, covering it immediately. I was like super embarrassed. But yeah, look, it's a difficult question because I do see the argument that you're making, Waz. It is important to protect kids. And yeah, some parents are not tech savvy enough to protect their kids with the content filters. But I also think it's really unfair for adults to be forced to share personal, private information. And I do think that information will be kept. I think it will be tracked and very likely it will be sold.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder if a better solution would have been a sort of Nancy Reagan just say no type of thing about filtration systems for the kids. I mean, yeah, it'd have been nice if the conservatives would have tried that route, like sort of getting the word out, like a truth commercial damn near for, pornography on the internet as it pertains to kids. I wonder if just a get the word out campaign would have been better. But again, I'm sympathetic to the argument. I just don't think this solution, it kind of takes it's like taking a sledgehammer to like an ant on the wall, it feels like.
Yeah, I don't think just say no campaigns would work. I think in fact, it would just draw more attention to pornography and kids would probably watch more of it. That's my take on those campaigns. Fair. Yeah, it's just like abstinence only education in, sex ed in public schools. Like the data shows it doesn't work. And in fact, it gets kids to think about sex more. So it's better to actually teach them how to protect themselves. And that's kind of the point that I'm getting at. I think the most harmful element of online porn, yes, for some is the addictive nature, but it's also substituting sexual education. And that's a problem. Because if these like young boys especially are not spoken to about what sex actually is and they get their education from pornography, well, their first experience is not going to be a pleasant one because that's not how girls and women want to be treated for the most part. So anyway, we'll see how this comes out, but the Supreme Court's decision likely will not be made public or decided until June or early July.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. We also love it if you hit the join button below because that makes you a member, and members allow us to be independent, honest. We can be as progressive as we want, no corporate media influence, and that's all because of you guys. We love doing the show with our members. Hit the join button, become one of the Young Turks.